Love Letter to You 3 is the latest installment of the series that Trippie Redd has been continuing over the past couple of years. Now, I did review Trippie Redd's Life's a Trip that came out earlier in 2018. I think it was around the summertime, July-ish, something like that. And yeah, I hated it. I found the vocals to be some of the worst vocals I think I've heard on record all year, and the whiniest, generic and cliche lyrics you could possibly come up with. It was bad. Now, I was really harsh on that album, but at the same time, I do have to kind of recognize that Trippie Redd, he's like 19. He may have been about 18 when he wrote that album, to be fair. So, you know, I get it, you know, you're young, you're writing songs about your emotions, about your feelings, you're putting everything down, you're laying it down to kind of contextualize everything and make an understanding of how you feel, and you're learning how things work and how your emotions work. It's a tough time when you're a teenager, I get it. But it's really hard to take seriously when there are plenty of teenagers out there, and have been over the years, writing incredible music from such a young age. I think just because you're young doesn't mean that you have to be immature. You can be mature and write some amazing music from a young age. We've seen it from Nas, we've seen it from Lord, we've seen it from Let's Eat Grandma. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of those guys, but, you know, they are pretty talented songwriters. And this new age of emo trap is kind of souring my taste on the genre further and further as things go along, to be honest, because I'm just finding less to take away from the genre. I'm finding less innovation. It's all sounding samey, and the lyrics are pretty much getting more and more basic as time goes on too. And to add on to all of that, you've got this vocalist like Trippie Redd who wails and whelps all over the instrumentals in such an annoying way. So I'm just sucked out of the music completely. But for this latest A Love Letter to You, I will say actually, you know what, he has improved vocally. And not only that, he's putting less emphasis on his vocals, which is so much better for him. I'm surprised to be saying that there really aren't that many tracks where it's, you know, him singing, whelping in the way that he does over ordinary sounding instrumentals. There are actually some really good tracks where he restrains his vocals in a pretty good way. He's you know, rapping and singing over some pretty good sounding beats as well. And even the closing track, which on paper sounds like something I'd hate, but actually works quite well. I mean, it's just Trippie Redd singing over a nice acoustic guitar. It's nothing you know, completely original, but it's something that could have gone completely wrong because of how often his vocals really grate on me. It's a pretty nice track, honestly. I must say, he really impressed me on this track. It's not bad at all. Even the opening track like Topanga, where, you know, again, it actually sounds pretty creative. I really like the way the beat's been put together. I like the way he's singing. It's quite catchy and melodic. And then later in the album, there are some really good instrumentals that end up impressing me quite a lot. I'm really surprised that the track featuring Juice WRLD works out way better than I expected. Pretty straightforward, pretty melodic. But you know what? When Trippie Redd is kind of just breezing over a beat in a pretty laid-back, casual way, I think it works out way better for him than when he's whelping out his emotions. He's, you know, got all of his feelings written right on his sleeve for us to see, and I don't think he's able to present it in a particularly interesting way most of the time. Because as much as I am praising this album way more than I expected to be, there aren't exactly that many tracks that stand out, aside from the ones I have mentioned. Although there is Elevate and Motivate though, which has this beautiful, beautiful, jazzy, soulful instrumental. Holy shit. It is gorgeous. It's gotta be the best instrumental on this entire project. I was really taken aback by it. I think it sounds so gorgeous. Then you have pretty ordinary R&B anthems like the track with Tory Lanez. I mean, I've never been the biggest fan of this guy. Honestly, he just comes off as a discounted version of Chris Brown. And Chris Brown, like, isn't even that good to begin with, so I just don't care for Tory Lanez. Not to say that he can't ever make anything good, but in the R&B world, I hardly consider him to be anyone essential at all. And unfortunately, there are just a few tracks on the album here where Trippie Redd is going back to his usual whelpy. I just don't get it, man. I really don't. I mean, he can sound good on plenty of these tracks, as I've mentioned already. Topanga is probably one of his best songs he's ever made. And then he goes and does that. It really is too inconsistent and doesn't really match the flow of the album. Too many tracks just go off in these really generic, bland, uninspired emo trap anthems that for a lot of people this would be appealing, but for me, I just don't want to hear it really. Especially when there are lyrics like, she'll say she love me not. It's just so high schooly drama type crap that I just can't get invested in. Not only that, but you know, the way Trippie Redd like pours his everything into a girl or multiple girls, I don't even know, but it just becomes really, I don't know, it can get quite manipulative at times, it can feel really harmful. That's where the immaturity comes into play once again. Like, there's one thing where you can make a breakup album and, you know, express how you're completely destroyed by losing another person, but then there's the way he does it, and it's just like, you know, she's the reason that he's in the position he is, you know, they caused this, it's their fault. He can't love ever again because of this one girl that let him down and broke his heart. It just gets so incessant. It's just exhausting to listen to, and at this point I'm just waiting for him to get a bit older and mature and get out of this phase where everything is crumbling before his eyes because he, you know, experienced one bad relationship. It can become a bit too much. And with the way, you know, he writes these songs in a pretty cliche way for the most part, he doesn't add anything different or new to the table with his lyrics. His vocals can get really frustrating at times as well. It just all makes for a pretty average listen, even though I can point out the really good high points that this album has that I'd love to see him continue later down the line. But for now, I'm going to go 5.5 out of 10. I think I'd recommend this over his past few projects because this is probably the one with the biggest, you know, highs that he's come out with so far. But I can't imagine people being able to sit through this entire thing without skipping at least a few tracks. But do let me know what you think of this if you have already heard it. Subscribe to the channel for more reviews. Have a good day.